Hello again. I'm going to make braised pork tenderloin and I'm going to do enough for 2 people. So obviously increase the quantity of the ingredients if you want to do it for more. And you'll need flour and rosemary. I'm going to put leeks in it and apple, a little bit of mustard, cider. I think you might enjoy this. Now I've cut the tenderloin at an angle into pieces that are about the thickness of a finger. And I've got a very sharp knife, so I'm keeping my fingers well out of the way. And that's going to be coated in seasoned flour. So I've got a tablespoon of plain flour with 2 teaspoons of rosemary. And to that I'm going to just put in some pepper and some salt. And then the tenderloin goes in and gets coated on both sides. You can do it in a bowl like this, or you can do it in a plastic bag. I find it's more difficult in a plastic bag because you don't have complete control of what's going on. Anyway, this is just to protect the outside. Whoops, the cat has come through. I hope that we're going to be safe. Never work with children and animals. Right, we're getting this coated. If you're not a fan of rosemary, you could put sage in actually, that would be quite nice. Just alter the flavours according to your taste. Move those over a bit. So just spoon the flour over the top. And that's just to protect it, and it will give you a sort of crust on the outside of the meat as well, because we're going to fry this. Braising is a process where the liquid only comes halfway up the meat. So it's going to be cooked in a frying pan or a shallow casserole if you've got such a thing, and it just makes sure, keeping an eye on Minnie down here, just make sure that it's not completely covered. Right, there we are. So that's done, that's all ready. Now I'm going to put that in the sink in case she gets the smell of it. Okay, now we're going to go over to the cooker and we're going to fry this just to seal it. So over we go. Now I'm just frying this in a tablespoon of olive oil using tongs because it's the easiest way to deal with it. And I want to seal the outside and get a little bit of a crust on it. And when you're doing this, only turn it over once. If you turn it over twice, you'll lose the crust. I know it sounds a bit weird, but I'll explain when we get to that point. We're going to just fry that for 2 or 3 minutes on that side. If it starts to go too quickly, if you think it might burn, turn it down because this doesn't cook for very long. You want to be sure it's cooked in the middle, so don't absolutely fry it so it's really black underneath before it's had a chance to cook towards the middle of the pieces of meat. So I've got it on one of my faster rings, but I've got it turned down to sort of half height. And you'll be able to see that the meat starts to change colour. When you look at the sides of it, you can see it's changing from pink to brown, and that's a sign that it's beginning to cook. What I want is a nice brown crust underneath, and then I'll turn it over, and that I won't turn it again after that because I'll lose it. Pork tenderloin is so lean, it's lovely, and if you go to a good butcher, they'll take off a lot of the fat on the outside, so you have it really, really very lean. Absolutely lovely. It doesn't take long to cook, but obviously you want to make sure it's cooked all the way through. Let me show you what that looks like under there. You see I'm getting some nice brown colour. So what I'm going to do now is turn them all over. And if I was to turn it again, I'd lose that because of all the liquid. It would just soak into the liquid and it would disappear. I mean, it won't look so appealing. I'm going to turn it down a bit more. I don't want it to burn. I want to be sure it's cooked all the way through. Now at this point I'm going to add the other flavourings. So I've got some leeks. I've got just, it's a big one, so I've got 1/4 of a leek that I've cut into fine slices. Sprinkle that in. I've got 2 cloves of garlic because we like it, and I've sliced that. That goes in. And then I've got an apple, and I only want segments, so I'm going to use one of these apple segmenters just It's loud, isn't it? Sorry about that. Drop those in. There we are. That's an eating apple. I've never done it with a cooker. You could do, I suppose. It would have quite a good flavour. And at this point, I'm going to add my liquid. It could be stock or it could be cider. And you want about 400 mils. It will spit, so be careful. Don't add it all at once. Put some in. You don't want to cover the meat because you'll lose that lovely crust. The rest of the flour goes in at this point. So just sprinkle that in. See if you can get it where the gaps are when the liquid is. And that's going to help to thicken all this. Thicken your sauce. Just give it a stir with your fork and that will get rid of any lumps. And then, in addition to that, we're going to add a teaspoon of French mustard. Give that a bit of a stir. Move things round a bit so that the flavours all get shared around. And then I'm going to turn it up so it boils properly. And then I'm going to turn it down again in a minute and leave it for probably 10 to 15 minutes. That's as long as it takes, but just so that we know that the meat is cooked all the way through. If the apple is still a little bit crispy, that's fine because you have lovely flavour with eating apples. There we are. So braising, when the liquid only comes sort of halfway up the meat, doesn't cover it completely. Right, so I'll turn that down and I'm going to give that 10 to 15 minutes. Okay? Now this is almost done, and because it's an open pan you will get evaporation of the liquid, and so on 2 occasions I've come to it and felt it was a little bit sticky, you know, that there was a little bit of, I needed a bit more liquid, so I've added just a tiny bit more liquid twice over just to give me some sauce, but especially in that corner there, I don't know why, it's cooking unevenly for some reason. However, that's practically done, and I'm going to serve it with roast potatoes and French beans out of the garden, which are cooking nicely. So I think you'll enjoy this. We're nearly there. Just wait for the timer and it'll be done. There we are. That's it. Time's up. I'm going to turn it off, strain the beans and serve it for dinner. I hope you like this. Have a go and see how you get on. Remember, you can alter rosemary for sage if you want to. Enjoy.